This is your go-to podcast for the breaking news across the NFL, while breaking down how this might affect your fantasy team's success. Are you ready to be a champ? Then welcome to Fields of Fantasy.
How's it going, everybody? It is your boy, Johnny B, and we're back for DFS with Fields of Fantasy for the final game of the season. It is Kansas City Chiefs versus the Philadelphia Eagles in the Superbowl showdown that nobody wanted. But that's what we've got, and we're still excited for some DFS action. And of course, we are playing it over on FanTeam Europe's premier and best destination for DFS action. And, you know, Dowie and I, we came over from DraftKings. I think we both enjoyed our season playing over on FanTeam. It's been a nice new home. How have you enjoyed the season? Have you enjoyed it over on FanTeam, Dowie?
Yeah, I believe it's the best. Well, it is the only real option we have for DFX action, isn't it? In England,
I think it's the best prizes. More money on the table for the players and loads and loads of different games.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it because you got all the different competitions, the other sports. I think the payout structure as well, and I also believe they have improved throughout the season as well. You know, with the pricing on players.
Yeah, I think so as well.
I think it's got harder for us to pick our teams, but it makes you think a little bit more. It's more of a competition, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think it's been a profitable one, so I'm looking forward to the new season, see they bring anything in new and stuff, and the sports book on the side as well is also a good option to have.
Well, I think we're both quite excited to have a good old go at the season game as well, aren't we?
Yeah. So I do think it's actually been really good. I must admit, I think when we both first started, it was a bit unsure on the I use the app. It's not the most user friendly, you would say.
Yeah, I would agree because I can't even use it.
But now I've used it for the rest of the season. I'll be honest with you, it's fine. I think it just takes a bit of getting used to, but it's perfect.
It's like anything. It's like an Android person using an iPhone or an iPhone person using an Android. It feels really weird, and it doesn't feel like it's very friendly to start with, and then eventually you get used to it, innit? So,
but yeah, I guess we owe FanTeam a thank you as well for keeping DFS running.
I think we do, to a level and extent where it's still worth playing. Anyway, as you know, it is Super Bowl weekend on Sunday, and FanTeam have got their version of a captain showdown competition where you pick a captain, a vice captain, and 4 other players from the game, and try and get the best team that you can get. You can pick any positions. There's no limit on it. You can pick basically whatever you like, from QBs, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, DSTs. Any amount you want from either position. You've just got a budget, which is a total of $100 million or pounds, whatever you want to call it, but $100 million to spend. And, you've got to try and spend it wisely, because what you do have with the captain and the vice captain is, of course, the captaincy makes it more expensive, and even the vice captain gives a little bit more of an extra premium on top of their standard prices. We both had a bit of a fiddle making up some teams. We both selected a team. Neither of us knows what the other person has selected as their team. So if it is the same, I will apologise. But Dowie, who is your captain?
So, before I get into my captain, I looked with the sports book. They got Chiefs 1.5 favourite.
Okay.
Which is pretty even, isn't it? A total points 48.5. So, looking at the betting odds, it doesn't really swing either way. So, it doesn't help you in terms of picking your players. So, I looked at it. Who do I think is going to win the game? I think the Chiefs. Why have the Chiefs got to the Super Bowl this season. It's been the worst of luck. Good coaching, great defense.
Yeah.
I think Spags has done a great job. So going off that, I am going with my Chiefs defense as captain.
Okay.
So I can see you looking, thinking, wow, you weren't expecting that, was you?
That's bold. Yeah.
But last time the Chiefs played the Eagles in the Super Bowl, Hurts made a couple of them big mistakes, didn't he?
Yeah.
I would say the defense has carried them through to the Super Bowl. Using them as your captain allows you to stack your team full of studs.
Yeah.
So when you hear the rest of my team, I think you'll get the reason why.
Okay. It's interesting. Interesting. Should we do it where you do your whole team, or do you want to do it
No, let's
captaincy?
hear your captain.
Okay. So I've put a team where I think try to make a team which has gone away from probably Captain Obvious, Mr. Overowned by almost everybody, which is Saquon Barkley. So I try to create a team that's different from that, but has a lot of the other, what I would say, premium assets. And I do think if Chiefs win this, I think Kelsey will probably have to have a good game. We know he can turn up very often in the playoffs. Was quite quiet against the Bills, wasn't he? But um, I've gone with Kelsey. I think just because I do think he can turn up with Mahomes on a playoff, and I think they're going to have to. You have got Worthy and other assets at the Chiefs that you know are other targets, but I think for them to win, I think Kelsey and Mahomes have got to turn up and you know and show what they've done season upon season as like a partnership. So that's how I've gone with it. Just because I want to create a team that goes away from the norm because I feel like it's very hard to differentiate yourself in this game mode. And I think having no Barkley share at all in your team is one way to do that. It's high risk, but it could be high reward.
Yeah. I like Kelsey as captain. I'll be honest with you though. I do think Barkley will be the most owned. Could Kelsey be the second?
Well, I think he could be, but I don't think it's going to be as close as in percentages.
So we've gone same team, different players.
Yeah.
Vice captain.
Okay.
I've gone Worthy.
So I've gone away from it because I think I've gone away from Worthy. Well, why have you picked Worthy?
So in the playoffs, he's had
Yeah,
11 receptions.
he has.
He goes for the big chunk yards, gets the gadget plays. I just think his activity may be more just because he gets the gadget plays as well. So, he has a couple of rushing carries. One
Yeah.
of them goes off, and I think he'll get his fair share of targets. I'll be honest, my vice captain was between him and Kelsey.
Okay.
I went with Worthy because he was slightly cheaper. So it made me even strengthen my team. Look, my team's stacked.
No, I can see that. I think Worthy's not too expensive, is he, compared to your Barclays
It's 15
and your
million standard. I
QBs?
don't know
So
what that does to it when it goes to vice captain though.
um, it doesn't actually say on the bloody rules, does
No.
it? But it might be. I think it's 1.25, 1.2 costs. Then you get 1.2 points, and the captain is 1.5 and 1.5. So no, I can see that. I think if you're going to go heavy Chiefs win um, with a defensive performance, that's quite different. I think from a lot of the teams, I don't think there'll be that many teams that have got their captaincy and vice captain as a partnership of Worthy and the Chiefs DST. So, and I think in this game where you have loads of people making loads of entries, because this is a multi-entry tournament, you've got to try and have some lineups like you're doing because that'll be the type of lineup which, if it is top, is going to put you a lot higher than other people and so much different to their teams. Um, so yeah, my vice captain though, I've gone AJ Brown. I think he has had a lot of quiet weeks, but he actually had a very good week against the Commanders. 21 points, and he only costs 16.5. Again, I look at the game and I think both teams are going to have to. I think it could be quite a high scoring game. I think everybody probably looks at the Eagles and the Chiefs and think two of the best defenses in the league. And that's probably why they're in the Super Bowl. I think, you have to have a good defense probably more often than not to get to the Super Bowl. But I think we've seen many Super Bowls where, it goes slightly out the table. So I've gone with AJ Brown because I think if Eagles get behind, they've got to chase it. I think Hurts and Brown have to get heavily involved in that. He's going to go to his key targets like Brown. And maybe you could get Devonta, who's only 10.5 million. But I think Brown is more likely out the two to get some decent points.
Yeah, I would agree. I actually think AJ Brown, statistically not, but he's probably the best wide receiver in the league for me. He's got everything. Big, powerful. He doesn't drop, does he?
I think he's reliable as long as he's in targeting. I think he's been a bit quieter this season.
Before his injury, though, I'm sure he was wide receiver 1.
Potentially, yeah. Potentially. But I'm trying to create a team that's different, and I'm like, if the Eagles are going to do well away from Barkley, Brown has to be a part of that, surely.
Yeah. What I like with your team is your captain and your vice captain could be the two players who get the most targets and receptions and yards and touchdowns either.
Exactly. And if it's a back and forth, both teams keep having to go down the other end to score, then I think that's kind of a good way to try and target the game.
I'm quite interested with it because, obviously our tactics are very different.
Yeah.
I've got Chiefs and Worthy. You've got Kelsey and Brown. On paper, I would say everyone's going to favour your team at the minute. I'm interested to see how I've saved money with my captain and vice captain. At the rest of our teams, how weak is it compared to mine?
We'll find out in a minute. So what is the rest of yours? And then we'll see how different the two teams are.
So, obviously, having Worthy, I've gone Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
But playoff Pat as well. His best game all season against the Bills. He turns up in these games, don't he?
Yeah. Okay.
Got Saquon.
Okay. Yeah.
Because even though I think Chiefs defense can do good, I still think Barkley can go for 100 yards.
Easily.
Kelsey.
Yeah.
He's a great big time player, isn't he? And then my last player. Now he's the one who could be swapped, but he was the best, I would say, with the money I had left.
Pacheco. How much did you have? Pacheco, okay.
So I do think with Pacheco, a good thing with him is I think Hunt will be a lot heavier around. So he could be a good pivot as well.
Okay.
So what do you think of that team?
It is stacked outside your vice captaincy and your captaincy, isn't it?
So yeah, when you listen to this team now, Mahomes, Pacheco, Barkley, Worthy, Kelsey, and Chiefs. Yes.
You are pushing for a Chiefs win here, where the DST does well. But I agree. Whether whether the Eagles win or lose, Barkley's probably going to have a lot of volume, as we know. It's just going to happen, isn't it? You would have thought so.
Yeah.
And then you've allowed yourself to have him in your team, but that doesn't mean the Eagles are going to score loads of points. I do think, there was times where 2 weeks ago, the Cook made it during that game, was having really good time against the Chiefs. So if he can, Barkley definitely can. Be interesting to see if. Well, I think Philadelphia are more likely to stick with the run compared to Philly. So I have gone, as you know, I've got my vice as Brown. I've got my captaincy as Kelsey. So then, naturally, with those as my vice and my captain, I thought, well, if they're going to have a good game and get touchdowns, why not just stack with both of them? So I've got Mahomes and I've got Hurts. Because I think it's a easy, simple move that the combination of the two, as long if Hurts, if they're going to do well, I've then got the points from the QBs, and hopefully, they both get into the 20 pluses. Then that's on top of my Brown score and my Kelsey score. But then I didn't have much money left. I could pretty much afford to have one of the DSTs and then have one of the cheaper options, 8.5 million or lower. So, like you, I do actually have Pacheco. I think at his price, he is very, very appealing. But I think him, Marquise Brown, Juju, Hopkins, I think any of those is a bit of a lottery, really. Which one you pick is one of those could have a good game. It's about being lucky, really, and picking the one that actually does do well. In terms of my DSTs, though, I was and ahhing with this one, whether I go the Chiefs, whether I go Philly for the DST. But in the end, I actually went with the Eagles. I think they just have players on that team that are so good at making plays. They are trained very, very, very well at knocking the ball out for a fumble. I just think out of the two, I went with who do I think is more likely to get a touchdown. I think it's the Eagles. I think, yes, Casey are very well coached at stopping your game, but how are they as good at scoring on a turnover? I don't think they are. So that's why I went with the Eagles. But I knew I had to have one of them, really, because of how much money I had left. So, yeah.
I think your team pretty solid, for where you spent.
This is the thing. I think I've got a pretty solid team that's gone away from Barkley. And I think if you go away from Barkley, it's about as solid as you could probably get. Because you have got, underneath Barkley, I've got the 4 next most expensive assets. And then a DST and Pacheco. I do think that's set up with, if those receivers are going to do well, the QB should do well.
Yeah.
So I like the ceiling of it.
I do actually really like yours. I was expecting it to be worse, to be honest. When you mentioned your captain and vice captain.
Yeah.
I was expecting it to be worse, to be honest. So,
if you think that the price for Kelsey and who was your vice again?
Worthy. I think there's about 1.5 million in it. And
so there's 1.5 million of Brown on their standard price, and then when you get your vice captain, it's not going to make much difference. It's 0.2 of 1.5 million is, so what's that? Like 300 to 400,000. I can't be asked to do the exact quick maths, but that's not much at all. So then you've got, Kelsey and your DST, which is the biggest difference. But that's why I haven't got Barkley and you do.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
Because Barkley's 25 million. And to have him in your team's hard. And then to have him as a vice captain or a captaincy, which I think many people probably do, makes your team a lot weaker across the board.
But yeah,
And
I've
I did.
actually enjoyed that seeing your team there.
Yeah. Well, I think I think it feels like when you look at this type of thing of like the captain showdown, you look at it and think there's not that many ways to skin the cat, but actually there are a lot of different ways, and a lot of different ways to try and make your team affordable and still competitive. I do have one team which has Barkley as a vice captain, but then that required me to go with a 5 million asset of Shipley if Gainwell's out, which I don't really think is going to get me much of a score back. And then Juju, who's then a punt. And that team, I'd feel, even though I'm, but the thing is, that you could get, but Barkley could be, we know he could score 35 points or something stupid, and the next person behind him, apart from the QBs, might only score 15 to 20. And then, that all of a sudden it definitely pays off his price, doesn't it?
And before we go, Johnny B, give us your prediction for the game.
My prediction for the game, I'm going to go to sleep for it. No, my prediction for the game, like you, the Chiefs win. The Chiefs win, and I just think, I think they've got the mentality for it. And come Sunday, will the Eagles show up? Because I think you roll it back 2 years, I think people would have. I'm trying to remember what the Super Bowl was like before between the two of them. I feel like people were fancying the Eagles then as well.
And I think Eagles were better 2 years ago.
I think they were. Do I think they
when
were?
They lost all the coaching staff, wasn't it?
To be honest, I actually think with Barkley they probably are all round better. I just don't think they're as easy to the eye as they were then.
Yeah,
I think their game plan is. I don't necessarily think the way they play in terms of winning now is any worse than it was before. I just think they were a lot easier to watch.
You know what? It's as much as it bores us. Probably the two best teams in the NFL.
I think, in terms of talent, well, the Eagles probably are in terms of talent. To be honest, they got talent all across the field, haven't they? The Chiefs as a whole team, probably not in terms of talent, but I think in terms of how they play and how they're coached and how they win. You don't win a game on paper, do you? You win a game on the field, and that's the difference. And the Chiefs know how to win on the field because they've got some very, very good coaches that know how to win.
Sure.
Cool. Well, that has been our Super Bowl Captain Showdown game on Fan Team. Our teams are in there. Of course, there is a £2 entry, which means if you haven't signed up via our link, which is in the description of the podcast, then you can do and get yourself a free £2 entry. And you could just, even try it out. And if you like it, guess what? You can come back next season and get involved for Fan Team for the 25 season, which hopefully you'll be choosing to listen to us talk about the game again.
Or they can play baseball, Premier League, golf, NBA.
Yeah, we may do a podcast on one of the other sports if we get bored, but I think
should we try basketball?
We might basketball. Jesus Christ, that's hard to keep up with because it's like every day. Yeah. So I don't know how you do that one as a weekly episode, really. But we'd like to do F1. I'd like to do F1, but then I think it's a hard one because you don't know the actual roster. Well, you don't know where everyone's starting on the grid until Saturday afternoon.
Yeah.
How do you put that one out there? But we're going to have a look, and hopefully we'll find something. But you're going to get some more content. Do not worry. You'll hear us next week where we will review the Super Bowl showdown and the results. And of course, we'll bring you some draft content. We'll be bringing you some content about the coaches coming very, very soon, and some other stuff all throughout the training camp. And don't worry, we will be bringing back our team reviews. So you can get ready for your 2025 draft season. And you can get to know every single player on every single team and whether or not we think they are good value in terms of their ADP. But there's lots of content to come. Do not worry. This might be the last DFS game of the season, but the DFS episodes will not be over. Thanks very much, everybody, for listening, and enjoy the Super Bowl. And we'll see you next week where we'll go through the action. Stada.